Dave McMenamin, who's been following the Cavs for quite some time for the worldwide leader in sports and the NBA as a whole, insider and reporter for ESPN, back here on the show. How you doing, Dave?
I'm great, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I guess before we get to the Eastern Conference, what were your thoughts watching that Western Conference Finals game last night? Steve Kerr was flat out asked by a member of the media if Curry was hurt and how much his injury is affecting his play, and Kerr put his tongue in cheek and gave a percentage from the draft lottery. What do you think?
I'm not so sure I'm going to call him hurt because didn't he look pretty good against the Pelicans? So, I mean, did something happen in practice in the time in between? This is the time where NBA players have to manage their bodies over the course of a regular season to perform at their best in the playoffs. And I understand that he had an injury, not a wear and tear injury, but if he's on the court, that's the old maxim: if you're playing, you're not injured. And was his injury causing him to start the game 0 for 6 from 3? To me, the Rockets just took it to the Warriors. I got to give credit to Mike D'Antoni for not doing any drastic lineup changes or not really going away from what they worked. He figured that Eric Gordon's due, P.J. Tucker's due, Trevor Ariza is due, and James Harden's going to be the same brilliant guy he always is. And they look like a very formidable team that's going to give the Warriors trouble through the rest of this series, the way they played last night.
All right, and then as for the Eastern Conference Finals, what's Ty Lue to do? I mean, he went to Tristan Thompson. We did see a lot of the players that they got in the Lakers trade. Rodney Hood as well. It seems like he might be out of bullets here, Dave. What do you think going into Game 4?
It looks a little bleak, other than the fact that you had to remember that the Celtics are still so young, and they're 1-4 on the road in these playoffs. The Cavs play well at the Q. They have a real home court advantage, and LeBron was getting anything he wanted until he got, unfortunately shouldered in the face by Jason Tatum, unintentional, of course, but that affected his play in Game 2. Ty Lue claims he's going to stick with Rodney Hood. He went away from Jordan Clarkson in Game 2. Again, there aren't many bullets there. He has to play these guys that he trusts and know that can contribute on both ends. So that means J.R. Smith, even though he's going 0 for 7, you're not going to pull him for a guy like Jordan Clarkson because J.R. Smith knows the defensive schemes. He can get hot. And Ty's kind of stuck with the hand he has here to play, and he has to think about, hey, JR shot 77% against the Raptors in the Eastern Conference semifinals. That's bound to come back around for him. I do think you'll see more Tristan Thompson because the word that Ty used after Game 2 was the Celtics were gooning up the game, and Tristan Thompson is the most physical player for the Cavs. So I think you're going to see more Tristan Thompson and potentially even some more Larry Nance. And Ty doesn't like to play a 3-center rotation. That would be obviously Kevin Love and Tristan and Larry Nance Jr. But I think that's going to be his best course of action in terms of getting guys who play with automatic physicality out there on the court.
What do you mean by gooning up the game? I mean, wasn't it J.R. Smith who shoved Al Horford in the back towards the end of a game that was already decided?
Yeah, it was an interesting choice of verbiage by Ty Lue. Of course, his player is the one that was called out by Marcus Smart for being dirty, and rightfully so. That was a play that has no business on a basketball court. It's dangerous. I was a little surprised considering J.R. Smith's previous history with these type of things that he wasn't suspended for Game 3. I guess Joe Borgia, the head of NBA officials, said that Al Horford wasn't hurt. So do you need to hurt a guy to get a suspension now? I'm not so sure, but I think Ty, I'm not really sure that he meant it in a dirty connotation, other than the fact that they are setting the tone for physicality and what is allowed and what will be called and what won't be called out there on the court. He wants his team to do that same thing and bring that physicality from the start. And that's why you're going to see him sticking with Tristan Thompson, sticking with a guy like J.R. Smith, because J.R. Smith, even though he had his problems in Game 2, both shooting the ball and embarrassing the game, he is their most physical wing defender.
Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting point. Dave McMenamin of ESPN joining us here is that, if Horford had broken his arm, does that mean J.R. Smith would have been suspended for as long as Horford would have been out? I mean, isn't that the flip side of that whole argument?
Yeah, and the TNT broadcast crew last night was talking about a play where Ariza was bringing up the court and Draymond Green two-arm shove into him, and they said, what if that was Chris Paul? bring the ball up the court. And he actually takes the same shove, but because he's a smaller player, he goes flying into the crowd. Is it a different call? These things are tough to call. I don't think the standard should be injury, though, or the standard should be how far a player is thrown. I think if you're an airborne player who's defenseless, that should be a pretty easy call. Now, I'm not so sure I would have been in favor of suspension. I think he should have been thrown out of game 2. But when you get it wrong initially, then you have to kind of make up for it. And I am a little surprised he wasn't suspended for game 3.
Dave McMenamin here on the Rich Eisen Show. I don't want to stir things up, but this may sound like it. That's a heck of a caveat to the question I'm about to ask. When you say that LeBron was affected by getting a shoulder in the face, if this was the NFL, we would be talking about concussions, and we would be talking about what was he doing in the game. Did they put him back in the game because it was a playoff game? I mean, seriously, there would be so much up in arms. And I understand the NFL is a lot more physical game, even with the NBA being as physical as it is. But if he was affected by it, was he concussed? Best we could tell, Dave?
I mean, I can't answer that other than to say that, LeBron told us that he went through a litany of tests when he went back to the locker room. I imagine concussion protocol was one of them. But even if this was the NFL, I mean, didn't the same thing happen with Tom Brady, where, after the fact, Gisele Bundchen says that he played through concussions and it was all hush-hush? Like, I mean, that rule is in place, and I think it's an important one to protect players in the long term, so there aren't things like chronic CTE that's being perpetuated while they're playing the game. But at the same time, if you're going to tell me that that was the first time a player potentially was concussed and forced his way back into the game, I don't think that'd be accurate either. I remember, I think Kobe Bryant in an All-Star game got hit across the face from Dwayne Wade and returned to the game, and there was, a thought maybe he got concussed from that. That's an All-Star game, let alone an NBA playoff game with a lot on the line.
Well, it's just something that I was thinking about watching that game, certainly since he wasn't the same player after getting hit across the head like that. But clearly his marbles are all there. I'm wondering, with somebody who's been covering LeBron for as long as you have, what you thought of his photographic memory recounting of the top of a fourth quarter in response to a question a couple of days ago.
I enjoyed it, and it's something that I've been privy to, and something, quite frankly, where I had to kind of get my P's and Q's in order when I do attempt to ask a question of him post-game, because if you get something wrong, it's not even necessarily that he's trying to show you up, but he's going to correct you because that's the way his brain works. So, the one thing where I've seen it manifest itself, where you can talk to him about a sequence, and he can tell you and explain to you how he manipulates the defense. He can say, well, on this possession, I did a pocket pass to our center, and that caused their backline defender to come up from the wing. So then I knew if the next possession, if I faked that pocket pass, the backline defender would come up to meet the center, and I could swing it to the corner to an open shooter. Like, that's the type of spatial recognition and play-by-play memory that he has that allows him to affect the game, not just show off in a press conference and somehow ridiculously get an applause. I still don't know. I was in the front row, so I don't know who applauded.
Yeah, who did?
I don't know. I don't know. I need to find that out, but I don't know. As impressive as it was, we shouldn't have media members applauding an act like that.
We thought it might have been like members of the Cavs front office or staff. No.
Yeah. No, I don't. They're not usually, and usually they're like kind of to the corner of the stage.
Okay.
I can see those guys, so I'm still not sure.
Well, you would know. So last one for you, Dave, I guess, and obviously we're going to chat throughout the playoffs here. The end game scenario for the Cavs, if this is it, because it sure feels like this is it, that it's going to be a very tall order for them to win the 4 of the next 5 based on what we saw from the first 2, that the way this ends and the way that the Celtics look, if it is a total blowout, does that affect any way, shape, or form what happens July 1 with LeBron James, or that's going to go however this ends, finals, Eastern Conference Finals, going 7 games? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think a lot happened on Tuesday night, not only them losing in blowout fashion, but the fact that the Cavs pick that they got from the Kyrie trade only ended up being number 8. And so that is one less major asset that they have going into this summer that they can say to LeBron, well, hey, we got the number 1 pick, so don't you want to stick around to play with, DeAndre Ayton, or we're going to trade the number 1 pick for Kawhi Leonard. Don't you want to stay? The number 8 pick doesn't have that same type of market value. So that said, though, the Cavs win Game 3 on the home court, and we're not talking about 4 out of 5 anymore. We're talking about just a series. And so I don't think many people in the Cavs organization are starting to think that it's over yet. If they go down 3-0, it's a different conversation. But they look at it like they got to win on their home court, and they get to delay that conversation of where LeBron is eventually potentially going to go as long as they keep winning basketball games.
Dave, we'll chat down the line. Thanks for the call here, and enjoy the rest of the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll chat in the NBA Finals.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich.
You bet. That's Dave McMenamin at MC10 on Twitter here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.